the most dangerous animal that ever walked this planet. It wasn't a T-Rex. It wasn't a mammoth. It wasn't even a shark. It was a hairless, 150-pound primate with no claws, no venom, and no natural armor. And somehow, every massive creature that shared the earth with us disappeared. We're talking about animals the size of cars, creatures with tusks longer than your entire body, giant ground sloths that could tear a tree out of the ground with one arm, short-faced bears that could outrun a horse. All of them gone. And the timing is very suspicious, because every single time modern humans showed up somewhere new, a new continent, a new island, the megafauna there started dying off within a few thousand years. Every single time. So here's what I want to figure out today. Did these animals fear us? Or did they just not see us coming? Because the answer to that question changes everything we think we know about prehistoric life. Here's the thing that nobody really talks about. When scientists first found the bones of these giant animals buried next to human tools and spearheads, they had two theories. Either humans hunted them to extinction, or the climate changed and wiped them out. And for decades, those two camps argued back and forth. But both of those theories are missing something huge. They're both asking the wrong question. The real question isn't what killed the megafauna. The real question is, why didn't they fight back? Think about it. A woolly mammoth weighs 6 tons. A giant ground sloth had claws the size of your forearm. A diprotodon, basically a wombat the size of a car, roamed Australia. Early humans had wooden spears and stone tools. So how exactly were a few dozen people with sticks supposed to wipe out a species of animals that could crush them by accident? Unless those animals had no idea what humans were capable of. Unless they had never learned to be afraid of us. There's actually a name for this in biology. Scientists call it the naive prey problem. And it's one of the most fascinating and honestly heartbreaking ideas in all of evolutionary science. When a predator shows up in an environment for the first time, a place where it has never existed before, the prey animals there have no built-in fear response toward it. They haven't been hunted by that predator across generations. Their instincts haven't been shaped by that specific threat. So they just don't react. They don't run. They don't hide. They stand there and look at the new thing. We've actually seen this happen in real time. When European sailors first landed on islands like Mauritius, the dodo birds walked right up to them. Not because dodos were stupid. That's a myth. But because nothing on that island had ever hunted them in that particular way before. They had no fear response to humans because humans had never been there. And within a few decades, they were gone. The same thing almost certainly happened on a massive scale during the first human migrations. When our ancestors crossed into North America around 13,000 years ago, the mammoths and mastodons there had never seen a human being in their entire evolutionary history. The short-faced bear had never smelled one. The American horse had never been chased by one. So when these small, two-legged creatures started showing up, the animals just watched. And that hesitation, that missing fear response, was probably all the advantage our ancestors needed. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Because fear isn't just something animals are born with. It's something they learn. And they learn across generations through something called cultural transmission. For example, if you take a wild crow that has never seen a human face before and show it a threatening mask while trapping it, that crow will learn to fear that specific face. But more than that, it will teach its babies to fear that face. And those babies will teach their babies. Scientists have tracked this kind of fear memory passing down through crow populations for over 10 generations. The original crow is long dead, but its great-great-great-grandchildren still mob people wearing that mask. Elephants do the same thing. There's a famous study in Kenya showing that elephants in areas with high levels of poaching pass down a fear and avoidance of humans to their calves. Even calves born after the poaching stopped. The fear gets baked into the family unit's behavior, passed down like a warning. Now think about what that means in reverse. If no humans had ever been in North America before 13,000 years ago, then the mammoths there had no cultural memory of human hunters. No grandparent mammoth had ever been chased by a person with a spear. No mother mammoth had ever pushed her calf away from a human camp. The entire fear response, that generational knowledge, simply didn't exist. So when the first humans walked into that landscape, they weren't walking into a dangerous gauntlet of territorial megafauna. They were walking into a buffet of animals that had no idea what was coming. But here's the thing that really seals this argument for me. Africa, look at Africa. Because Africa is the one continent where most of its megafauna survived. Elephants, rhinos, hippos, lions, Cape buffaloes, animals that can absolutely kill you. They're all still here. And Africa is also the place where humans evolved, where we spent the most time, where the megafauna had the longest exposure to us as a species. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. African megafauna had hundreds of thousands of years to co-evolve with humans, to develop fear responses, to learn what we look like, what we smell like, what it means when a group of upright primates starts moving toward you in a coordinated pattern. The animals that didn't develop that fear response got selected out. The ones that did, the ones that ran from humans, that avoided our camps, that treated us as a threat, those were the ones that survived long enough to reproduce. Basically, Africa's animals went through a long, brutal education process, and the graduates of that process are the ones still walking the savannah today. Meanwhile, the animals in Australia, North America, South America, and Eurasia either had less time to adapt, or they arrived in those ecosystems separately and never encountered us at all. They skipped that education. and most of them paid for it. Now I want to flip this around, because we've been talking about how the animals reacted to us, but we should also talk about how we reacted to them, because early humans weren't fearless either. Imagine being a hunter 13,000 years ago. No metal, no guns, no traps beyond what you could build by hand. And you're looking at a woolly mammoth that weighs 6 tons and has tusks that can flip a car. What do? Archaeological evidence suggests early humans were incredibly strategic and surprisingly brave. At sites like Clovis in New Mexico and various sites in Europe, we found kill sites where it's clear that humans took down mammoths not by brute force, but by working together in organized hunting parties, using terrain to their advantage, driving animals off cliffs or into bogs, and attacking vulnerable individuals like juveniles or sick animals. The Neanderthal humans who lived in Europe before our arrival were also hunting megafauna, cave bears, woolly rhinos, mammoths, and there's evidence that they were sometimes dramatically injured doing it. Skeletal remains of Neanderthals show patterns of broken bones that look a lot like what rodeo riders get, injuries consistent with close-range struggles with very large animals. These were not safe hunts. People died doing this, but they kept doing it, which means the calorie payoff was worth the risk. So the picture you get is a strange tension. Humans who were afraid of these animals, hunting them anyway, while the animals themselves weren't afraid at all. And that imbalance, human intelligence and coordination against animal naivety, might have been the deciding factor. One of the things that convinced scientists that humans were at least partially responsible for these extinctions, not just climate change, is the speed. These extinctions happen fast, not in geological time, but in human time. When humans first arrived in Australia about 50,000 years ago, the giant wombats, the giant kangaroos, the marsupial lions, most of them were gone within about 10,000 years. In North America, the extinction of the megafauna happened in roughly 1,000 to 2,000 years after human arrival. In some places, the model suggests it could have been even faster, a few hundred years, maybe less. Climate change doesn't work that fast. Climate change took down the dinosaurs over hundreds of thousands of years. It doesn't selectively wipe out the big animals, while leaving the small ones. But human hunting? That targets exactly the kind of animals we're talking about. Large, slow-reproducing species that only have one offspring every few years. Here's a simple example. A mammoth cow probably took about 22 months to carry a calf, just like modern elephants. And she probably only had a calf every 4 to 5 years. So if a human hunting group killed just a few extra mammoths per year, on top of whatever natural mortality was already happening, the population couldn't recover. The birth rate couldn't keep up with the death rate. And that slow, grinding math eventually leads to zero. That's what makes the naive prey problem so devastating in hindsight. It wasn't that our ancestors were bloodthirsty or evil. It was just that the math was always going to work out this way. Humans are really good at cooperative hunting, and animals that don't fear you are really easy to hunt. So here's the moment I want you to really sit with. Picture the scene. It's about 13,000 years ago, somewhere on the North American plains. A small group of humans, maybe 15, 20 people, has been tracking a mammoth for 2 days. They know its pattern. They've watched it from a distance. They've noted where it drinks, where it sleeps, where the ground gets soft and slows it down. And the mammoth? It has noticed these strange two-legged things following it. It's curious, maybe. It's turned to look at them a few times. But it hasn't run. It has no built-in script that says these things are dangerous. No ancestral memory of what a coordinated human ambush looks like. It just goes about its day. And then the humans move into position. They separate the mammoth from the group. Using noise, torches, whatever they have. They drive it toward a ravine. And then spears start flying. That mammoth's last experience on Earth is probably confusion, not fear, because it never learned fear, just confusion. Why are these small things doing this? Why does it hurt? What is happening? And somewhere in that moment, I think, is the real tragedy of the megafauna extinctions. Not that they were hunted, but that they never even knew to run. So let's bring this together. The reason giant prehistoric animals likely didn't avoid us, or didn't avoid us enough, comes down to a few core things. First, naive prey. Animals that had never encountered human hunters had no fear response to us. They didn't run because they didn't know they were supposed to. And by the time they started learning, if they survived long enough to start learning, the populations were already too small to recover. Second, the Africa exception proves the rule. The places where megafauna survived were the places where they had the most time to develop fear humans, where coevolution gave animals a fighting chance at adaptation. Third, human intelligence and cooperation turned our physical weakness into an overwhelming advantage. We didn't need claws or venom. We needed coordination and time. And we had both. And fourth, the speed. The extinctions happened so fast in geological terms that it's hard to explain without human involvement. Climate alone doesn't pick and choose like that. The real takeaway from all of this, I think, is something uncomfortable but important. We have always had an outsized impact on the natural world, even when we were living in small groups with stone tools. The psychological gap between us and the animals we share the planet with, our ability to plan, to coordinate, to pass on knowledge, was always enormous. And the animals that couldn't adapt to that gap fast enough are now fossils in a museum. If you found this interesting, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.